Hey, we're at the Okefenokee Heritage Center once again, and today we are delighted to let you look at some of our artists' work. And we have with us Linda Freeman, who just placed in the Ben Smith art competition. I always get that a little bit messed up because it's long, but we're delighted to have her here, and I have watched her progress through the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years, because they used to come in on Thursday afternoon or morning and they would practice their painting, and Linda has progressed really well and is becoming a very good artist. And today she's going to explain a little bit about her technique and the things that she does. So thank you so much, Linda, for your time, and I'm going to let you have it.
Thank you, John. John had asked me earlier the process, how a picture came together, and there's no pat answer. It just depends upon the day of the week, the weather outside, the mood, how much time I have, and really where you are. And what I mean by that, canvases like this and a mixture of oil paints and things like that would be inappropriate in some areas. If you're traveling a lot, like I've traveled a lot through my career, you wouldn't want to take something that's really, really heavy, especially if you're spending a lot of time like in the desert or in the jungle. Then you'd want something really light, because what you have is what you carry. Other places like Waycross, Georgia, have gyms like the Heritage Center and excellent mentors, and there's a lot of excellent artists here. So I got a lot of ideas, and watching people on Thursdays, it's just like, I never thought about doing that, but maybe I'll try it. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. The way that this came about, I had several different pictures, and I liked a little bit about each of them. I liked the foreground in one, the horizon in another, and the fact that there really was just very little sky in the other, but what there was had a punch. So when you put them all together, voila. And this is acrylic. And I learned early, my first love is oil. But sometimes you'd be ready for retirement before an oil painting dried. So sometimes you need things to go a little faster. And with acrylics and with the mediums they have today, acrylics can be very, very smooth, and you can almost work in the same way that you do oils. Now on this one, what I really liked about the pictures that I was drawing from was the different colors. And even though very similar, you would almost think that it was just a totally different location, where the reference pictures where I got them from, these were actually in the same location, just different times with a different color filter. But I thought it was really kind of powerful. The other thing John asked me if I drew, well, yes and no. On some of the pictures that I've done, I had to draw first some parts of it, and then that had to fit into the surroundings. Some of the things I learned is if I didn't really plan it right, the perspective wouldn't be right. Like in this one, the lighthouse could have been incredibly overpowering if the perspective was wrong. Or it would look like a miniature sculpture. So I had to learn that the hard way, and let me tell you, there were a lot of mistakes. And talking about mistakes, I keep this around when I start feeling really good about what I'm doing. Because when John asked me if I drew, there's things I should have drawn that I didn't, and this is a big example. When you first looked at it, when I first got finished with it, it was like, hey, that's not bad. Okay, here we go. The next morning I looked at it and was like, oh crap. This is not at all what I had in mind, because the perspective is totally wrong. And I could go back and fix it, but you know how sometimes we all need a little, yeah, sometimes you need to just sit down and go, I need to think about this a little bit. And one of the ones that I really like, some of the things that I'm doing now, is combinations. And this is a combination of oil and acrylic. And again, talking about learning, I had to learn that you can put anything on top of acrylics because they're very forgiving. Oil has no sense of humor. Nothing goes on top of oil but oil. And if you don't believe me, just try it. It'll just rub right off. The other thing that, talking about the different mediums, the one medium that has really just spanked me is watercolor. I am a total watercolor failure. And people who I watch, like Susan, who does beautiful watercolors, and Jorah, it's like, how do they do that? So I can't do that. So what I do is I imitate watercolor with very thin acrylics. And then over that, use pen and ink. And that's probably one of my favorite mediums, is mixing the two. But again, you don't want to overpower anything. So as far as how do things come together, no pat answer. Everybody has their own way and everybody has their own feelings. And one thing I have learned is my emotions come through in my paintings. So if I'm angry, people tend to go, woo. If I'm happy, perspective, I've had people stand and picture I thought was pretty good, but then they started doing this. And I realized that, you know, water has to be horizontal. And when if it's not, it looks like it's kind of going off the edge, and people will tend to give you that information. They're nice. Oh, it's a nice painting. The reality is my perspective was wrong. But that's my process, and the Heritage Center has been just a wonderful find for me coming back to Waycross.
Linda, thank you so very much for sharing all of that information with us. And when you did this, you must have been pretty emotionally stable and content, because most of it's blue.
Yeah.
So that's good, and they're excellent, and thank you so much. And I didn't realize, was not aware that you could mix the acrylics and oils. I just thought it always had to be one or the other.
No, a lot of times I'll use acrylics as a background, as big blocking in,
Yeah.
and then use oil for the fine
The finishing
definitions.
points.
Or for, like if you have a real big acrylic and you want something smooth, then I'll use oil of acrylics to really kind of smooth it out and make it satin.
Okay. So how long does it take the oils when you use them to dry? Depending on the weather?
Depending upon the weather, depending upon how thick it is, depending upon whether you use a fast drying medium,
Okay.
it can weeks to months.
All right. Very
With
good.
acrylics, seconds.
Yeah. As you know, I carve, and that's what I use to paint the wood with. And what I like about acrylics is it dries real quick. I can take a blow dryer and I can paint, and I'm done, and I can move on and continue on, and it doesn't slow down the process so much.
And what I like now, they have a lot of mediums that you can add to acrylics that slow them down. It can almost give you almost like an hour to work with them.
Already? I hadn't tried that.
Yeah, it works just.
Okay, well, that's excellent. Linda, thank you so very, very much for your information about painting. And as you'll notice on Linda's shirt, she has those little cardiogram things. And Linda is a retired nurse, and she is retired from the military as well. So we thank her for the years she served in the military and the effort that she gave this country. And thank you once again for all your knowledge, Linda.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you.